X2 X-Men United is a 2003 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics superhero team The X-Men. Directed by Bryan Singer and written by Michael Dougherty, Dan Harris, and David Hayter, from a story by Singer, Hayter, and Zach Penn, it is the second installment in the X-Men film series, and it is the sequel to X-Men. It stars an ensemble cast including Patrick Stewart, Hugh Jackman, Ian McKellen, Halle Berry, Famke Janssen, James Marsden, Rebecca Romijn-Stamos, Brian Cox, Alan Cumming, Bruce Davison, Shawn Ashmore, Aaron Stanford, Kelly Hugh, and Anna Paquin. The plot, inspired by the graphic novel God Loves, Man Kills, concerns the genocidal Colonel William Stryker leading an assault on Professor Xavier's school to build his own version of Xavier's mutant tracking computer, Cerebro, to destroy every mutant on Earth and to save the human race from them, forcing the X-Men to team up with the Brotherhood of Mutants to stop Stryker and save the mutant race. Welcome back to Marvel Movie Rewind, where we look back at every live-action Marvel movie. Today we are discussing X2, X-Men United. The financial and critical success of X-Men persuaded 20th Century Fox to immediately commission a sequel. Starting in November 2000, Bryan Singer researched various storylines, one of them being the Legacy Virus of the X-Men comic book series. Bryan and producer Tom DeSanto envisioned X2 as the film series equivalent to the Star Wars franchise's The Empire Strikes Back. Producer A.V. Arad announced a planned November 2002 theatrical release date, while David Hayter and Zach Penn were hired to write separate scripts. Hayter and Penn combined what they felt to be the best elements of both scripts into one screenplay. Singer and Hayter worked on another script, finishing in October 2001. Penn was partially hired when he convinced Singer not to adapt the Dark Phoenix saga storyline for the film, feeling that the franchise's universe should be established much more before going cosmic. Instead, and what he feels was his major contribution to the project, Penn based the film's outline on Chris Claremont's graphic novel X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills, before leaving to work on another film. Michael Dougherty and Dan Harris were hired to rewrite Hayter and Penn's script in February 2002, turning down the opportunity to write Urban Legend's Bloody Mary. It turned in hundreds of drafts to Singer. Angel and Beast appeared in early drafts, but were deleted because there were too many characters. Dr. Hank McCoy can be seen on a television interview in one scene. Beast's appearance was to resemble Jim Lee's 1991 artwork of the character in the series X-Men Legacy. Angel was to have been a mutant experiment by William Stryker, transforming into Archangel. A reference to Dougherty's and Harris's efforts to include Angel remains in the form of an X-ray on display in one of Stryker's labs. Tyler Mane was to reprise as Sabretooth before the character was deleted. In Hayter's script, the role eventually filled by Lady Deathstrike was Anne Reynolds, a character who appears in God Loves, Man Kills as Stryker's personal assistant and assassin. Singer changed her to Deathstrike, citing a need for another kick-ass mutant. There was to be more development on Cyclops and Professor X being brainwashed by Stryker. The scenes were shot, but Fox cut them out because of time length and story complications. Hayter was disappointed, feeling that James Marsden deserved more screen time. Rewrites were commissioned once more, specifically to give Halle Berry more screen time. This was because of her recent popularity in Monsters Ball, earning her the Academy Award for Best Actress. A budget cut meant that the Sentinels and the Danger Room were dropped. Guy Hendricks Diaz and a production crew had already constructed the Danger Room set. Now, let's talk about the production. The movie was produced by Marvel Enterprises and distributed by 20th Century Fox. It was directed by Bryan Singer once again. The movie was written by Michael Dougherty, Dan Harris, and David Hayter. The movie was also produced by Lauren Schuller Donner and Ralph Winter, also again. Producer Lauren Schuller Donner had hoped to start filming in March 2002, but production did not begin until June 17, 2002, in Vancouver and ended by November. Over 64 sets were used in 38 different locations. The film crew encountered problems when there was insufficient snow in Kananaskis, Alberta, for them to use for some scenes. A large amount of fake snow was then applied. The idea to have Jean Grey sacrifice herself at the end and to be resurrected in a third installment was highly secretive. Singer did not tell Famke Janssen until midway through filming. While filming the scene where Xavier and Lehnsherr play chess, Stewart and McKellen had no clue how to play chess, so a Canadian Grandmaster was called on set for a day. Cinematographer Newton Thomas Siegel and two stunt drivers nearly died while filming the scene in which Pyro has a dispute with police officers. James Bamford worked as Hugh Jackman's stunt double for rehearsals until he suffered an injury. Due to Bamford's looks, Singer asked him to play the role of Gambit for a cameo appearance, but Gambit's scene was deleted from the film's final cut. According to Alan Cumming, Singer began berating the cast. Cumming would also later say that working on the film was a bad experience. Singer and Siegel credited Road to Perdition as a visual influence. Though Siegel shot the first X-Men in an anamorphic format, he opted to shoot X2 in Super 35. Siegel felt the recent improvements in film stocks and optics increased the advantages of using spherical lenses, even if the blow-up to anamorphic must be accomplished optically instead of digitally. Cameras that were used during filming included two Panaflex Millenniums and a Millennium XL, as well as an Aton 35mm. Singer also used zoom lenses more often than he did in his previous films, while Siegel used a Fraser lens specifically for dramatic moments. The Blackbird was redesigned and increased in virtual size from 60 feet to 85 feet. John Mears served as the production designer on the first film, but Singer hired Guy Hendricks Diaz for X2, which was his first film as a production designer. For scenes involving Stryker's Alkali base, Vancouver Film Studios, the largest soundstage in North America, was reserved. Visual effects supervisor Mike Fink was not satisfied with his work on the previous film, even though it nearly received an Academy Award nomination. Up to 520 shots were created for X-Men, while X2 commissioned roughly 800. A new computer program was created by Rhythm and Hughes Studios for the dogfight tornado scene. Synsight was in charge of scenes concerning Cerebro, enlisting a 20-man crew. The Alkali Lake Dam miniature was 25 feet, or 7.6 meters, high, and 28 feet, or 8.5 meters, wide. Synsight created 300 visual effects shots, focusing on character animation, while Rhythm and Hughes created over 100. Janssen would later admit that she was not a fan of working with green screens on set of the film. Magneto's helmet was slightly redesigned as Ian McKellen found wearing it uncomfortable in X-Men. Halle Berry dropped out of Jennifer Lopez's role in Jiggly to reprise the role of Storm. Rebecca Romulon's makeup for Mystique previously took 9 hours to apply during the filming of X-Men, but the makeup department was able to bring it down to 6 hours for X2. Singer opted to cast Brian Cox in the role of Colonel William Stryker, as he was a fan of his performance as Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter. Alan Cumming had always been Singer's choice for the role of Nightcrawler, but Cumming could not accept the part due to scheduling conflicts. Ethan Embry had been reported to be in contention for the role, but the film languished in development long enough for Cumming to accept the part. Singer also felt comfortable in casting Cumming since he is fluent in German. The drawings of Adam Kubert were used as inspiration for Nightcrawler's makeup design, which took 4 hours to apply. For the scene where Nightcrawler has his shirt off, Cumming went through 9 hours. To best pose as Nightcrawler, Cumming studied comic books and illustrations of the character. Although Senator Robert Kelly was killed in the first film, Bruce Davison reprised the role for scenes where Mystique uses persona to infiltrate the government. Filmmakers cast Aaron Stanford in the role of Pyro after they were impressed with his performance in Tadpole. Director Bryan Singer makes a cameo as a plastic prison guard. Michael Dougherty and Dan Harris, the film's writers, make cameo appearances as surgeons in Wolverine's flashbacks to his time at Weapon X. Chiara Zani, who voiced Jubilee in X-Men Evolution, appears as a White House tour guide at the start of the film. The first cut of X2 was rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America due to the violent shots with Logan when Stryker's army storms the X-Mansion. A few seconds were cut to secure a PG-13 rating. The film's score was composed by John Ottman, a regular collaborator with film director Bryan Singer. Ottman established a new title theme, as well as themes specifically for Magneto, Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, Mystique, and Pyro. The soundtrack album X2, Original Motion Picture Score, was released on April 29, 2003. Ottman used a sample of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's Requiem as the basis for the music in scenes featuring Nightcrawler. As well as the music on the album, tracks by Conjurer 1 and NSYNC also featured in the film. The film premiered in London on April 24, 2003, and then had the widest release ever, opening on May 2, 2003 in 93 markets, accumulating $85.6 million on its opening weekend in 3,749 theaters in the United States and Canada. Overseas, it grossed $69.27 million in its first 5 days in 7,316 screens, including previews. The film exceeded Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets in terms of the number of screenings. X2 would hold this record until the following year, when it was taken by Shrek 2. It surpassed Star Wars Episode II: Attack of the Clones for having the highest opening weekend for a 20th Century Fox film. For 2 weeks, it stayed in the number 1 spot before being displaced by The Matrix Reloaded. X2, The Matrix Reloaded, Finding Nemo, Bruce Almighty, and Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl all became the first 5 films to cross the $200 million mark at the box office in one summer season. The film grossed $214.9 million in the United States and Canada, the 6th highest-grossing film of 2003, earning $192.8 million overseas, for a worldwide total of $407.7 million, the 9th highest-grossing film of 2003. It earned $107 million in its first 5 days when released on DVD. It had a budget of $110 to $125 million and made $407.7 million at the box office. It currently has an 85% critic score and audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, a 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, and a 68 Metacritic score. X2 received positive reviews, with praise aimed at the performances, action sequences, storyline, and musical score. A video game titled X2: Wolverine's Revenge was released in April 2003 for PlayStation 2, GameCube, Windows, Xbox, and Game Boy Advance. Patrick Stewart reprises his role as Professor X, while Hugh Jackman's likeness was featured on the cover as Wolverine. Lady Deathstrike appears in Deadpool and Wolverine. Alan Cumming will reprise his role as Nightcrawler in Avengers Doomsday. X2 got a sequel 3 years later in 2006, titled X-Men: The Last Stand. With that being said, thanks for watching. Next time we'll be talking about Hulk from 2003. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more, consider giving a like or rating and subscribing with notifications so you never miss an episode. It's free. Also feel free to check out our other episodes and share this podcast with others on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time on Movie Rewind.